Hello, this is Honesty Podcast. It's your girl Jumi waking up to give you more tea about the Danish deception series straight from TikTok. I've brought it onto YouTube so that you all can learn. And I'm really grateful for the girl, Onyeka, because she's decided to bring this story out. She's not obligated to, but she has decided to. And I believe it's for people to learn to love themselves and not to be so desperate for love so that you don't fall victims to things, to scams like this. Okay. So when people teach self-love and they teach um to love yourself, be independent, enjoy to spend time on your own, don't look down on them. Don't think, oh, it's the feminist movement again. No, because these people are actually daughters, they're sisters, they're people's family members that is falling victim of scams like this. And I just feel like everybody can benefit from this story because the desperation to be coupled, to be a wife, to be a husband, to be a partner is real. The desperation is wild and it makes you do crazy things. So when you remove the desperation from your life, you make rational decisions because then you think outside of that bottle. I yesterday I talked about you being in a bottle and you can't read the labels because you're so in love and you're so desperate to be loved. But when you're not desperate, you become to make rational decisions by putting yourself outside of that bottle and thinking deeply, thinking, well, does this make sense? Is this giving red flags? Is this, you know, you run it through your people, you're not feeling embarrassed about your life. You run it through your friends, your family, you're not embarrassed and keeping it a secret. That way you can make rational decisions. It's all about self-love. So let's get down to it, child. I don't want to waste further time. Without further ado, we're going to go to episode 6 and it runs until episode 27, guys. So get ready for this. This kind of series is best when you're taking a long drive to work or to some gathering or some event. The long trip is the best because it's like a podcast. You just listen and it's so entertaining, although it's someone's reality, but it's at the same time very, very engrossing and it just like grips you. It's just like a Netflix series. So let's get down to it, child. No time to waste. Look, I'm even in my pajamas. I'm that invested. Are you invested? Let's get down to it, child.
So I've decided to loan him this money and he's agreed to it. So I download this app, it's called Revolut, and it's kind of like Venmo where you can send money internationally instantly. So I download it. It took like a day to like verify all my information and I was able to send him the 6K, and the next day he flew into Dallas to come be with me. And so that trip was really fun. We really didn't do a whole lot. I remember we just like went to the state fair and we went to dinner like once, and the rest of the time we just hung out at home. And I remember it was hard for him because he was dealing with some really bad back pains. And I think it was just because he was flying a lot, and he said he injured his back when he was playing handball. So I remember I was giving him like back massages like almost every single day because it was really, really bad. And so this trip was very, very short. He was only there for a week, but I would say this was a very special trip for us because this was like the first time that he actually started making friends, like through me. And I started watching him start to make guy friends. And so this was when I got even more excited because I felt like we were really starting to, build a life here in Dallas together. So he leaves, obviously, again, I'm depressed again. And at this point, I know he's definitely planning on coming to Dallas for Thanksgiving to meet my parents. But I didn't know when he was planning on flying back. And so basically he's gone, and I feel like the second he leaves, like everything just kind of like starts to like fall apart for him. And so for starters, his back pain was getting like much, much worse. He was complaining about it every single day. Like he would text me in the middle of the night being like, it hurts so bad. Like, and I felt terrible because I wanted to help him, but there was nothing I could do because I'm living 5,000 miles away. On top of that, his uncle, who was really sick with cancer, had passed away, and he told me the funeral was going to be the next week. And I remember telling him, I will fly to Denmark if I need to, if you want me to be there for you. And he's like, no, it's fine. Like, I can handle it. It's okay. And so basically that happened. And then I remember I went to Charlotte to go visit one of my girlfriends who had just had a baby. One of my girlfriends that I've been friends with for years and years, since college. And so I'm in Charlotte with my friend, and I get a text from him. He's saying, hey, my dad's in the hospital. And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And he was like, we still don't understand what happened, but the doctors are running tests. And so later on that day, he told me that he had blood poisoning, and he had like, his infection numbers were like going crazy. And I remember telling him, well, if you're not able to come to Dallas in November, obviously I'll understand, especially like if your dad's in the hospital, like I understand completely. Again, I told him, I'll be there for you if you want me to. He's like, it's okay. Over the course of the next couple days, his dad started to show some more improvement. So he ended up deciding to come to visit me in Dallas. So now we're in November of 2022. So he comes back to Dallas, and basically this was a very exciting trip because, number one, I used to be on the board of an organization called UIU. It's a nonprofit that celebrates Igbo Nigerian culture, and my culture is so important to me. And so I was the event coordinator for the Dallas chapter, and I was so proud of this. Like, we had just won chapter of the year out of all the chapters in the nation. It was just such a huge accomplishment for me and my whole board. And I remember my cousin, who I told you guys I'm really close with, he was the president. And so we had a huge gala that we planned that year, and we had people flying in from all over the country to come. And obviously it took a lot of planning, and I was working really hard to make sure it was executed perfectly. I remember the day of the gala comes, and he is helping me set up, do everything that entire day. And this was the first time that I fully like integrated him with a bunch of Nigerians. And I was really curious to see how he was gonna react to being with all these people, because obviously Nigerians are so much fun, but some people might think we're a little bit too much. Forget them, but I wanted to make sure that he wasn't one of those people. So we have the gala, he helps me set up all day, and I'm just kind of watching him at the gala, just talking to people, and he's getting along with everyone. He's dancing to the Afro beats, and I just feel like, okay, he really takes my culture seriously. Like he wants to make sure that I know that he's gonna make sure this is a part of his life too. And I remember just being really happy about that. And so after the gala was done, it was a couple days, and my parents came to visit me in Dallas for Thanksgiving. And so I remember he went to go stay at a hotel because my parents, obviously, they're Nigerian, very traditional. We wanted to be respectful. So he went and stayed at a hotel, and my parents came to visit, and he was here when my parents got in town. And I'm telling you, my parents fell in love with him immediately. And I think watching him with my dad, it just warmed my heart because they just instantly connected. And my dad, like everyone else, was very fascinated by him. And I remember the following day we went to African market with my parents. It was just me, my ex, and my parents. And he's talking to my parents about the Olympics, and they're asking him all these questions. And he was like, yeah, like the gold medal I gave to my mom, she has it. And then the bronze medal, I actually donated it to charity. And I'm just like, this guy is just so freaking amazing. And so we had an amazing Thanksgiving. It was his first Thanksgiving in the state. And my grandmother had recently just passed away. And this is my dad's mom. It was really, really sad. And he was talking to us about the plans for the burial. And so he said, we're gonna do the burial in May. It's gonna be in the village in Nigeria. And he looks at my dad and he says, I'll be there. And I remember looking at him like, I don't think you really understand what you're agreeing to. And he said, I don't care. I'm gonna be there. I'm like, we're talking about the village in Nigeria. We're not just talking about like a big city where you can get a little bit of culture shock, where you like, or go back to your hotel. And no, we're talking about being in the village. And he said, I don't care, I'm gonna be there. And so that was when I realized like this man really takes my culture seriously. He wants to be there for me. He wants to be there for my family. And that meant so much to me. And so at the end of the trip, I told him, I said, this week has showed me that I know that I want to spend my life with you, and I'm just thank you for being the man that you are. And he said, I want to spend my life with you, and I'm going to let you know, like, I already know that I want to marry you someday. Like, and I don't want you to ever doubt that. And so he asked me, he's like, I have a question. Like, do you have an idea of what ring you would want? And I was like, I mean, I have some ideas, but I have not thought about it really extensively. And so he said, what are your thoughts on us going ring shopping? And keep in mind, at this point, we've been dating for like 4 months, 3-4 months. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. So we found a jeweler. We went and we tried on some rings. I remember I'm trying on lab grown and natural, and I'm like looking at the price differences, and I'm like, I am not allowing you to buy me a natural stone because that number is just crazy. I'd rather us spend money investing, doing other things. And he said, well, let me look into it because I kind of do want to get you natural. And I was like, no, we're getting a lab grown. And I remember, like, if you've, gone ring shopping, the price difference is like astronomical. And so I remember I picked out a ring that I really liked, and then we left, and that was basically the end of like the rings for that moment. And so he goes back to Denmark, and the plan was for me to go on a trip with him for Christmas. As I mentioned previously, my parents were traveling for Christmas, and him and his older sister do not have a relationship. Like, they can't be in intimate settings together, so they alternate Christmases. Like, he had last Christmas, so this Christmas was her Christmas. So we already had planned to spend Christmas together. And so originally we were talking about going to South Africa, like I mentioned before, and then we started looking at flights, and he was like, it's a long trip, I only want to fly business, and they were like $12,000 round trip. And he's like, well, maybe we can make it work. I was like, we are not spending that much on flights to South Africa. That's not happening. And so I started looking at other flights, and then we talked about maybe going to Brazil. And then he tells me, okay, make an itinerary and look at hotels and flights and everything and send it to me, and I'll book it. We're gonna go to Brazil. I said, okay, sounds good. So I wake up one day, I said, hey, did you book the travel? And he was like, no, I haven't, but there's something I need to talk to you about. I go, what's up? He goes, so I talked to a doctor because my back has gotten really, really bad, and it turns out I have 2 herniated discs, and I'm gonna need to get surgery. And I said, okay, like, that's fine. And he said, I'm gonna have to get surgery December 21st. And I said, oh wow, okay, well, that's fine. We don't need to go on a trip. I'll just come to Denmark and I'll help you recover and everything. And he said, actually, no, I don't want you to come to Denmark. I want you to be there, but I don't want that to be the first time you meet my parents, and they definitely want to be there. And at this point, I'm like, what do you mean? I'm your girlfriend and we're talking about a future. Why would I not be there when you're getting a major surgery? So he tells me that he needs to get a back surgery, and he does not want me to come to Denmark because he wants me to meet his parents with him there, because there's a serious language barrier, and he wants to make sure that I can communicate with them through him. And he's like, I don't want you to be using Google Translate to talk to them the first time you meet them. And yeah, and at first I was really upset because I felt like he wasn't treating me like I was his family. And I remember having a conversation to my mom about it because I was really frustrated. And she asked me, she said, do you think his parents know about you? And I remember I got really defensive because I told her, in what world would his parents not know about me? And I told him, I really want to be there. I was still kind of like pushing on him for like the full day. And I remember like that was like one of our first like little fights. At this point, we had not fight at all. Like, we have not had a single fight in the last 4 months because it's December of 2022. And so I told him, I said, listen, I really want to be there for you. And he was like, honestly, I don't want to like fight about this anymore. Like, let's just put this to rest. And I remember being frustrated because I also didn't have plans for Christmas because my family was going to be traveling, and I had planned to spend Christmas with him. So I remember I reached out to my best friend, Natalie. I was talking to her about the situation, and she said, why don't you fly to New York, spend a couple days with me, and then we'll go spend Christmas in Boston with my family. And I said, okay, like, we can do that. And so I brought up the option to my ex. He said, I think that's a great idea. I obviously don't want you to spend Christmas by yourself. And so I said, okay, that works. And I'm obviously extremely sad because at this point I hadn't seen him in weeks, and now I don't know when I'm gonna see him again because he's getting this surgery on December 21st. So I make plans, book my flight to New York, and a couple days before I leave, he told me, maybe what we can do is you can come to Denmark maybe a couple days after my back surgery, because the doctors say that I need to be up walking a couple days afterwards. And I think it's just my mom that's gonna come. So what we can do is you can come meet my mom and we can go see like the Christmas lights. And at that point I'll be able to translate and everything. And so I said, that's fine. So I was like, I'll fly to New York, go to Boston, spend Christmas with my friend Natalie. And then I'll also have like an extra bag packed for like things to wear in Copenhagen, and just make sure I'm prepared to figure out what the plan is whenever he tells me. And so I think we had decided that it was December like 26th or 27th that I was gonna go to Copenhagen and then spend like a week there. So I go to New York, have a great couple of days with my friend Natalie. And then on like the second day I'm in New York, I get a message from him and he said, oh my goodness, my dad's back in the hospital. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that. He's like, his infection numbers are bad again, his blood poisoning again. And he ended up getting diagnosed with leukemia. And I just, I wanted to be there for him. And I said, like, do you want me to come? Like, I want to be there for you. Like, I don't want you to feel like you have to navigate through these things without having like your partner there to support you. And he said, right now, I just need to like focus on my family, and I'm grateful for you to be here, but I also don't want you to meet my dad for the first time in a hospital bed. And I'm obviously frustrated because I really want to be there for him, but I also don't want to be too pushy because I'm like, this is your family, your dad's in the hospital. I don't want to put too much on him. And so we made the decision that I was just going to be kind of like on standby, which was fine because I was with my best friend Natalie and I love her so much. And so I was having honestly a wonderful time with her and her family. And so we had left New York, went to Boston. Obviously, I'm still in constant communication with him, trying to figure out what's happening. And he sends me a message. I think it's on December 23rd. He sends me a message and he says, I'm so angry. I just got into a fight with my sister. And maybe like 5 minutes later, he gives me a call and I'm like, what happened? He said, we're sitting in the hospital room and my dad is obviously laying in the bed, and my older sister looks to me and says, so where are you spending Christmas? And I said, not with you, bitch. And it turned into a huge fight. They start screaming at each other in the hospital. He storms out. He feels so disrespected. His mom's upset. His little sister's upset because they're already spending some of their holidays in the hospital. And like now, like they have all this tension in the family. And so I remember just being like so confused as to like why his sister is like this awful person. Like, why is she treating you like this, especially at a time when your dad is not doing okay? And so he calls me. He's like, I'm just so upset. Like, I want to get away. And I said, well, let me know what you need from me. Like, I'm literally a plane ride away. And he said, well, I obviously, like, now that I'm like don't want to be around my family, I would love to see you. And I said, okay, well, I can book a flight to Copenhagen and come stay with you. And he said, I don't know, I just kind of feel like I just need to get out of Denmark. And at that point, he was obviously in his hometown in Aalborg, which is 4 hours north of Copenhagen. And so he took a train back to Copenhagen. He's spending Christmas completely by himself, so sad. And we're still trying to iron out what the plans are. And he, again, tells me, I want to leave Denmark. And I was like, are you sure? Because at this point, like, I knew that I wouldn't say we were having like financial issues, but I knew like obviously there was like a little bit of tension with like all of his expenses that were adding up. And so I was like, it might be easier for me to just fly there and I can just stay with you. And he's like, I just really want to get away. And I said, okay, where do you want to go? He said, have you been to Paris before? And I said, no, I actually have not been to Paris. And he's like, well, let's do Paris. And I said, okay, I'm absolutely down to do Paris. And so I look at flights. I book a flight from Boston to Paris with a layover in Iceland, and I leave on the 26th, and I get to Paris on the 27th, and I see him. He meets me at the airport. We arranged our flights to make sure we landed around the same time. And something I need to add is before I had gone to Paris, he had told me that he had made a transfer from his business account to his personal account. And obviously in the States, when you make a transfer like that, it's just like a click of a button. Like, I have a business account, it's a click of a button. But he told me that in Denmark, when you make a transfer from your business account to your personal account, it actually has to go through the IRS. They take out the taxes and then they deposit the money into your personal account. And I'm over here thinking like, that's so crazy. But I also know like Denmark is a foreign country that I don't know anything about. I didn't question it for a second. And so he said, I'm just gonna ask my mom to give me a quick little loan so I can obviously cover everything with Paris and whatnot. And I said, okay, just let me know what she says. And then he basically came back to me and said, she said that she will only give me the money if I spend a couple more days with the family. I said, well, you should do that. Like, I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to take you away from your family by any means. And he said, I don't even want to be around them right now. It's just like not good for my mental health. And then I said, okay, well, what do you need from me? I said, I can cover like the flights and the hotels. It's not that big of a deal. And at that point, we had been on 2 trips together, or no, we'd only been on 1 trip together to the south of France. And then Paris was going to be our 2nd trip. The rest of the times, he had now visited me in Dallas 3 times. And so I told him, I said, I can pay for the flights and the hotels. It's not that big of a deal. He said, are you sure? I said, yeah, of course. He's like, I just don't know what I would do without you. Like, I just feel like I keep hitting these roadblocks and you are there to pick up the pieces every single time. And I'm so grateful for that. And I said, I'll always be there to support you. So now we can go back to landing in Paris. We meet at the airport and he told me, he's like, letting you know, I'm not in the best mood. I've been just like really upset. And I said, I am here to make you happy. So we land in Paris, we see each other, we're so happy. And we had the most spectacular trip in Paris. Like, we were just exploring. It was my first time there. And it was obviously, I paid for a lot of that trip and he paid for a little bit of the trip too. So we both kind of paid. And keep in mind, he still owes me $6,000 at this point. I am not concerned about the money. I don't know why I should have been concerned. I should have been noticing these red flags like, bro, like, where's my money? But again, this is someone that I am planning on marrying, and money at this point, like, money comes and goes, and I wasn't focused on that. I was just focused on us. So we finish our trip in Paris, say our goodbyes, and we start just, getting depressed as we always do when we say goodbye. And I board my flight to Dallas, and he asked me, what are your thoughts on us meeting with an immigration attorney just to get an idea of what the process entails? And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. Obviously, I had Googled and looked into a few things, but nothing concrete. At the time, one of my best friends was working part-time for immigration attorneys. So I reached out to her. I said, hey, can I get her contact information? And she said, yeah, of course. She gives me her contact information. And I call her, we set up a meeting, and obviously, still the time difference. He had a work trip in Norway that he was at. And at this point, also, little side note, we had started sharing our locations while we were in Paris. So I had his location at this point, and I could see that he was in Norway. And he also FaceTimed me from the hotel room. So he was in Norway, 100%. And we had a call with the lawyer, and we were discussing the process. And she tells us it's gonna take 18 months for you guys to get all of this process after the time you get married. And I was like, 18 months? She's like, everything is super backed up because of COVID. I always wanna let my clients know this stuff so that they are fully prepared. And I just felt like that sounded like such a long time. But we finished a conversation with the lawyer, and I then call my ex, and we're talking, debriefing on everything. And there's 2 different types of ways to get a permanent residency in the United States. There's consular processing, and then there's another way where you basically apply for the visa and you're living in the States full time while you're processing the visa. So obviously, because he was still working a lot and traveling a lot for work, and because of his dad's health, we decided we would do consular processing because why not? But then we start having the discussions on, okay, but the clock starts after we get married. And that's when he says, well, I would marry you tomorrow. And I was like, well, I would marry you tomorrow. And he was like, wait, really? And now the time has come for me to drop the first of many bombs on you guys. This man is actually not my ex-fiance. He is my ex-husband. We were not just engaged, we were married, and we are now divorced. So once we made the decision to get married, I remember we had a phone call over the course of like 6 hours in one day, we talked on the phone about all the things that we wanted to get out of life. We talked about kids, we talked about religion, we talked about everything. And at the end of that day, he told me, do you still want to get married? And I said, absolutely. I'm in love with you. I want to build a life with you. I want to have a family with you. So the decision was very, very simple. And so he already told me about a month prior that he had reached out to his realtor about putting out feelers about selling his home. Because at this point, now that we're getting married, he's like, I'm going to just try to spend as much time in Dallas as possible. And I was absolutely okay with that. And so in the beginning of January, he had told me that his realtor got an offer off market for his place. And I was like, that's great. And he was like, I'm going to probably take a loss. So, I mean, I'm just trying to get as much as my down payment back. And I was like, how much are you going to end up getting back? He said, probably around $500,000. I was like, well, that's, a good solid base for us to have. And I was more than okay with that. Keep in mind, he still does owe me money at this point. So they end up going under contract. The plan is for the house to sell by the end of January. And everything seemed like it was going smooth. And then one day he calls me and he tells me that he's had the worst day ever. And I'm like, oh, now what? He's frantic. He's like, there's a fire in the control room, the electrical control room at the apartment complex that he bought. And he's just like, I don't know what to do. He's like, there's no power. Like, no one has power. He's like, I just paid this guy $2,000 to bring generators to power up the whole entire apartment. I have an electrician coming. And he's like freaking out. And he basically used all of his money he had to put towards like the generators and paying the electrician for as much work as they could do. And I was like, okay, like what now? And he was like, I need help. At this point, he has now asked me for help. He said, can you send me $5,000? And I said, yeah, of course, I can help you. Again, love is a powerful drug. I hate myself. I hate this. I hate that I was so willing to help him, and it is what it is. But I sent him the $5,000. He tells me that his insurance is going to cover it. He's going to be able to pay me back. And also, like, I'm mindful of the fact that his house is supposed to close at the end of the month. And so a week go by and we start talking about plans for the wedding. And so at first we wanted to go to Vegas, and then we looked into it, and Denmark does not recognize wedding marriages that are done in Vegas, because you can get the marriage certificate and get married in the same day. Same thing with Colorado. Shout out to Denmark. I love that rule. But we're like, it's fine. We should just save money. Let's just do it in Dallas, and then we can go do a little weekend trip to Broken Bow, Oklahoma, which is like this cute lake town, and that can be our honeymoon. And he was like, okay, that works fine. We can do that. At this point, he has his flight booked to come back to Dallas in the end of January. Now we're in 2023. And he tells me that one of his really close friends that owns a plumbing business, and my ex was actually godfather of this man's son. This is confirmed. And he came to him and said that his partner in his business is like doing some like shady stuff. He's like scared that he's gonna get like implicated. He wants my ex to buy out his partner, and he's asking him for a loan of $250,000. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. And this time he asked me, and we're about to get married, so now I feel like I can insert my opinion about the situation. So I asked him, I'm like, is this just a handout, or is this going to be a good investment? And he was like, well, I think it's going to be a really good investment. Like, he has a bunch of ideas of how to expand the business. And to me, I was like, well, if you can help a friend and have a good investment, I think that makes a lot of sense. And as you guys can already tell, I'm a very giving person. I've been very giving my entire life. I get it from my parents. They're very generous and selfless. And so when it comes to helping friends and family in need, I've always done it. If I can do it, I'll always do it. And so to me, I'm like, we have this money coming in. Let's invest it. And I own this house here, and we don't have any big purchases coming up, so it's okay. Like, I wasn't really stressed and pressed about it. And so basically I was like, okay, the house is going to close at the end of the month, and then he'll be able to like pay me back the money that he owes me, and he'll be able to help his friend, and everything will be good to go. So he ends up coming back to Dallas. We get our marriage certificate. We set our wedding date for February 10th. And I remember the night before our wedding, he got really, really bad food poisoning, which I feel like should have been another sign that this was 100% the wrong decision to make. But instead I was like, hey, in sickness and in health, like whatever happens, we're going to make it through it. And at this point, he doesn't really have any money. I remember he looked at me, he goes, I'm sick, I'm broke. You want to marry me still? I said, I don't care if you're sick and broke. I love you for you. And we're getting married and I'm so excited and ready for it. So the morning of our wedding, obviously he couldn't afford a ring at that point. And so I remember he got on one knee. I like woke up that morning and he's down on one knee next to the bed. And he was like, I know this isn't the proposal you dreamed of. And I promise you, I'm going to propose to you one day with a real ring and we're going to share this with the world. But I want to ask you, will you marry me? And I said, absolutely, I will marry you. And so we went to the courthouse. I remember I was wearing a dress from Fashion Nova because I didn't care. I was just excited to marry my person. And we got married. And I mean, I truly thought this was one of the best days of my life. I was so happy. I was grinning so big. I still have the pictures and the videos from this day. And we went to Broken Bow afterwards. And we just had a great weekend in a little cabin in the woods. And it's just this cute lake town. So it's perfect. And we brought Smokey. I remember we got burgers. I made a lasagna. We just stayed in and hiked. And it was a really, really wonderful honeymoon. After the wedding, he stayed in Dallas for about a week and then he goes back to Denmark. And he had said that the house had closed and that he was just waiting for the funds. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay in Denmark. Again, I have no idea how this stuff works. And so while he's in Denmark, he says the funds came through. He transferred the money to his friend for the investment in the plumbing business. And he said that he was about to set up a transfer for me for the money he owed me, which was about $10,000 at that point. And so a couple weeks go by, I still haven't received the money. I'm not super pressed about it because I still am like fully trusting him at this point. And he ends up booking his flight to come back to visit in March. And this trip was a trip that my dad and my mom were coming back to Dallas to come visit. And he already planned to ask my dad for my hand in marriage. And so he's about to come visit and he calls me maybe like a couple days before he's about to come to Dallas. And he said, I received the worst possible news today. The IRS has told him that he owes $318,000 in taxes. In addition to that, his dad owes $12 million in taxes. And at this point, I did not have a lot of information about his family money because I've always been the type of person, like if your parents have money, that means your parents have money. That does not mean you have money. So I didn't even ask details about his parents' finances, but obviously I'm like, if his parents owe $12 million in taxes, they got money. And he said that the person that was doing his taxes for years and years and also doing his dad's taxes was one of his childhood friends that owns an accounting firm. And he's like, we've been paying a lot of money in taxes over the years, so someone must be committing some sort of fraud at this point. And so I'm obviously freaking out. This is a lot of money that he owes. So he said, you know what? I'm going to use the rest of the proceeds from selling my home. And in addition to that, he told me at this point he owns 3 different watches. He owns 2 Rolexes and a Patek watch, which if you're not a watch person, these are very expensive watches. And so a couple hours go by. He's like, I sold my Patek watch. And like he said, he sold it at a loss. He just needed to get the money. He said he's short about $30K. And so he tells me that he's going to reach out to his parents, and his parents are like, we don't care. Like, this is not our problem. This is your problem. Figure it out. And he starts to just like, continue spiraling. And so he tells me he's going to reach out to 2 of his childhood friends, one of which he was with this friend whenever we met in Croatia. So I knew they've been friends for a while, and then another childhood friend. And he told me, I've helped out these friends so much in the past, and it's almost like he was communicating to me that he was owed this money from them. I've never asked friends for money before, so this is like not anything that I'm comfortable with, but I was like, hey, if you feel comfortable doing this, go for it. I had not offered him a cent. So he comes back, says he's going to get $10,000 from one friend and then $5,000 from another friend. And I was like, that's so nice of them. He's like, I've honestly helped them so much in the past that like, I'm grateful that they're helping me when I'm in need. And so at this point he's short $15,000. And so he just comes right out and asks me like, can I borrow it? And I did not say yes right away. I said, listen, I have to pay my taxes too, because I was working at an accounting firm. Obviously that's W-2 income, but I was also doing real estate and I did very well the year before. So I owed a pretty penny in taxes, and it's March of 2023. So my taxes are coming up pretty soon. And so I told him, I'm like, I'm not comfortable giving you this money because, you know, like I have to pay taxes too. And now my savings is like really starting to like, I'm starting to feel like the financial impact, and it's starting to stress me out. And he said, you know, I hired a law firm. They've already looked into my tax records. They've already found indicators of fraud. I think I'm going to be able to get this turned around really quickly. And my biggest worry and concern is that if I don't pay this tax bill, it's going to affect my chances of getting a green card. And that's when I start to panic. And now I realize that I was just in a very toxic cycle of emotional manipulation. But after some time, he talks me into loaning him the $15,000. And I remember I only could send him like $3,000 at a time. And so I remember it was like over like the course of 5 days. And like every day he'd be like, hey, don't forget to send the payment. And everything about this felt so wrong in my soul, but I did it anyways. And this was not something that I kept quiet about. Like I told my parents, I told my siblings, like my ex got this crazy tax bill, and, you know, they were all aware that we were going through this like financial hiccup, and I didn't like want to be presented as these people with money. So I was very upfront and honest about it. And like, you can ask a lot of my friends, like I told a lot of my close people about this situation. And quick side note, I did not tell them that I was loaning him money. I just told them that he owed a lot of money, and I told them about the overall situation. But at this point, no one knows that I have given him any money. So I ended up giving him the money. He's so grateful. He's like, thank you so much for helping me out. And so about like 5 days later, he flies to Dallas to come and visit. And my parents came to visit maybe a couple of days after he came. And at this point, he's staying in the living room, not in the bed with me, but he could not go to a hotel because we're like trying to be mindful with spending. So my parents definitely started to bond with my ex a lot more over this trip. Like I remember my dad brought him this Nigerian Igbo cane that my ex had been admiring, that my dad had one. He surprised him, brought him one from Nigeria. And he actually took my dad out and asked him for my hand in marriage, even though we were already married. And my dad said yes. And my dad also broke cola nut in front of the family and like welcomed my ex into the family. It's just, I mean, it was really special. Obviously we were dealing with a lot of financial stress, but I want you all to know that like I was happy a majority of the time, regardless of the stress I was going through, which is just insane to understand. But after a week, we ended up going to Cabo for one of my childhood friends' wedding. And I had paid for the portion of the wedding already because I had been planning on going by myself. And then obviously I got into a relationship, so I just had to pay like a little extra to add someone to the reservation. But we decided to go a couple days early and celebrate like our honeymoon. And so basically our flight comes and he's staying in the living room. My parents are sleeping in the guest bedroom. And I wake up and I get a text from him. And he says, hey, can you come downstairs real quick? And I said, of course. So I go downstairs. I'm like, what's up? He said, one of my friends, the friend that he had received $5,000 from for the tax bill, reached out to me and said he's freaking out because his wife really wants to buy this house and he's short a certain amount of money to purchase this home. And obviously he was like, I feel so bad because he loaned it to me because he was trying to help me out. And my biggest strength and weakness is empathy. And when I saw him hurting because his friend was not able to do something because of the money he had loaned my ex, and at this point I felt like the friend had loaned us the money. It wasn't like he loaned my ex the money because we were married. And so I do something so stupid and idiotic. I end up loaning him an additional $3,000 not even a week after I had already given him $15,000. So I actually ended up giving him $18,000 in the month of March of 2023. Yes, I'm sick to my stomach. So I can send him the money. We end up going to the airport, fly to Cabo. We have an amazing trip. And at this point, I had just hard launched him on my Instagram Valentine's Day prior. So at this point, I hard launched him after we were already married. And we were in Cabo and I'm like posting more photos of him on my social media. And I'm going through my Instagram story views and I'm looking at the names and I'm seeing all of these Danish names. And I can tell they're Danish names because there's a different Danish alphabet. And so I'm clicking some of the profiles, and a lot of them you can see like my ex is like the mutual, like follows them. And so I brought it up to him like, hey, all these Danish people are watching my story, but I thought it was weird that no one was like following me. I'm like, these are your friends. Like, and I wanted him to maintain the same friendships in Denmark, even though he was moving to the States, because I never want to be the type of person that takes a man away from like his friends and family. And so I remember I'm clicking profiles, and I click a girl's profile, and I look at the first picture and I see my ex's dog. And that's something that I actually haven't mentioned. My ex did have a dog, and every time he came to visit, he had a friend that was watching the dog. And whenever he sold his place and decided that he was going to spend more time in Dallas, he ended up his dog ended up getting adopted by some people, because he's like, I just am not home enough. And at first I told him like, bring the dog to Dallas. Like, I wanted the dog to come. He's like, no, it's fine. Like, that does not make sense to do. And I supported his decision. And he told me that the ex could not take the dog because she was in med school and was constantly out of the home, and she just did not have the capacity to take care of the dog. But I see his dog, and it's like a duck-toller retriever. I think duck-tolling retriever. I think that's how you say it. I saw his dog as a puppy on this girl's profile, and I click the tag, and my ex is tagged. And so I look at him, I go, is this your ex-girlfriend? He was like, oh yeah, it is. I was like, oh, so she's watching my stories. He's like, yeah. I was like, okay, that's a little weird. And I remember checking like throughout the course of like every day for like a week, and like all these Danish people are still watching my story every day. And I'm like, don't you think this is weird that there's like 15 Danish people watching my story every day? And he was like, honestly, I just feel like they're a little bit salty that I like moved on. I'm moving to America. Like, I think they might be a little salty. And he said, you should just block them all. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this is like a very toxic group of people. And so I was like, is that what you want me to do? He said, yeah, just block them all. Like, they're not here for the right reasons. They're just looking to like creep, and they're probably just talking a bunch of shit. So I said, okay. And I decided to block them all. And so basically we come back from Cabo, he stays for about a month, and then he goes back to Denmark. And at this point, he had come to visit me so many times. And so I decided, now's my time to go spend time with him in Europe. And with his dad's health and his work, it made sense for me to just, go out of my way to try to spend time with him. And I could work remote at the time. And so I board a flight, and I head to Denmark for the first time. And I land in Denmark, and we go to one of his friends' homes because we're staying there for the night. We change, and we go directly to an Easter lunch with him and all of his childhood friends. So I walk in, and everyone is just so, so nice. And it's his childhood friends and like their wives and girlfriends. And everyone was just super kind to me. We were drinking, having fun. After a while, I was super jet lagged. So we ended up going back to his friend's house. That's where we stayed that night. And the following day, he gives me the hometown tour. So he shows me where he got baptized. He shows me his elementary school, and we're just exploring. And I just feel so grateful to like see his roots, see where he grew up. And after the day of exploring, we go to his parents' house, and this is my first time meeting his parents, and I am so, so nervous. I've always done really well with parents, but this is, different situation because number one, there's not a whole lot of Black people in Denmark, so they're not used to meeting people that look like me. Also, this man has made it very clear that he's moving to America, so you can only imagine how a mother might feel about the woman that's moving her son 5,000 miles away. So I was really, really nervous, but I'm not even kidding. The second I walked in, me and his mom instantly connected. And I think we bonded over our mutual love for my ex. And so it was his parents and his sister and her boyfriend that she had just recently started dating. We're all at this dinner. She cooked a very traditional Danish meal. It's called flæskesteg. I remember I had seconds, I had thirds. I think that made her fall in love with me even more because what mother doesn't want a girl that's going to eat their food? And so I brought her like a bunch of gifts, her and his father. I brought them gifts from Dallas, and we just really bonded that first day. She brought out all these photo albums and was showing me like my ex's childhood photos, and it was a really special night. And I remember my ex kept being like, are you sure you're okay with staying here? Because one thing I will say is they lived in a very, very humble home. And listen, I know there's billionaires out there that drive Honda Civics, so I don't judge. I'm never the type of person being like, why are you guys staying in this small house? Spend your money the way you want to spend your money. So I didn't think anything of it, but I was a little bit surprised. And also, Denmark is not the type of place that has all these like big houses. Like a lot of the homes are small regardless of if you have money. But again, didn't think anything of it. So we have a great dinner. The following day, we start going and having these like day trips all over Denmark and going to explore. And it's always me, my ex, and his parents. And one day we went to this area called Skagen, which is the most northern part of Denmark. And it's really beautiful. And it was just fun to go and explore. And we're driving home, and my ex starts yelling at his dad. His dad is yelling back. They just start going at it. And obviously they're speaking Danish. I have no clue what they're saying. My ex pulls over. He gets out of the car, storms out, starts like walking away. I get out of the car. I chase after him. I'm like, what's happening? What's happening? And he was like, my dad basically just said that he's over today. He just wants to go back and watch his game. And I was like, and he basically said he was really upset because he felt like his dad wasn't making an effort to get to know me. And that's when I realized that him and his dad had a really, really toxic relationship. And I also noticed that like they basically exchanged like 1 to 2 sentences a day. I also noticed that he wasn't as close with his sister, his little sister, because I mean, they would talk all the time. And so I thought that was a little strange too. But I don't know, I'm still trying to really understand this family dynamic. But what I do know is that he's a mama's boy. He's close with his mom, which, that was really, really important to me. There were a few things that I took away from this trip. The first being that he is a little bit embarrassed of his family's home. He kept saying, do you want to go stay in a hotel or Airbnb? Do you want to stay here? And I'm like, why would we not stay here? Like, if I went to go visit my parents and I wanted to stay in an Airbnb, they'd be devastated. I was like, of course we're staying here. And he was like, I know it's not like nice. It's a super old house. They haven't renovated it. Like, I don't understand. They have all this money. Like, why don't they do it? I'm like, it's fine. Like, don't worry. We'll be okay. Another thing I noticed was that I did not meet the older sister. No one spoke of her. And I knew at this point she had 1 kid at this point. So they talked about her a little bit, but it was kind of like the elephant in the room. Like, no one really talked about it. And, I know they don't have a relationship. They can't be with each other in intimate settings. But overall, like, I did have a good trip with him despite the tension. So after a week, we traveled to Copenhagen, and I remember getting to Copenhagen, and I'm immediately just so happy to be there because this city exceeded my expectations. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. And we ended up staying in a hotel, like a cheaper hotel by the water, and I can stay anywhere. I'm good. I don't need to stay anywhere bougie. And I remember him being like, I hate that we have to stay here. Like, it's not nice. I'm like, I don't care. Like, we have a bed, we have a place to stay. It's okay. And so we spent that whole week just exploring Copenhagen, and then we get ready to travel to Nigeria for my grandmother's burial. And so at this point, we're staying in this hotel, and I remember there was like a laundromat at this hotel. So I was doing laundry, and he said, I'm going to go and get a few things for my storage unit because he's moved out of his place at this point. He has a storage unit. And so he comes back home and he has like this Rolex box, and he's like, oh, this is one of my Rolexes. I want to show it to you. And at this point, I had already seen his steel, what's it called? The Batman. I already had seen that watch. He had brought it out for Cabo. So I've seen one of his watches. To Patek, he sold. I never saw it. So now this is the second watch he's bringing out. And he opens it. And it's, again, I did not know anything about watches before this, but now I know it's a day-date presidential watch with a green face. So he ends up telling me this is like a $50,000 watch. I was like, this is nice. And keep in mind, we're about to leave for Nigeria in like a day. I'm like, why'd you bring it out? And he's like, oh, I'm going to bring it to Nigeria. I go, you're going to do what? And he's like, I'm bringing it to Nigeria. I'm like, you cannot bring a $50,000 watch to Nigeria. And he's like, yeah, I can. And I'm like, this does not make sense. And he said, no, like, this is a special occasion. Like, I want to bring it out for this. And so I told him, okay, I feel very uncomfortable, especially like us being in the village and you're wearing this like expensive watch. You're just asking yourself to get robbed. I just did not understand it, but whatever. He ends up packing the watch. We get ready and we hop on a flight to go to Nigeria and meet my family for my grandmother's burial. Keep in mind, he had paid for all the hotels, everything in Denmark, and he paid for all the hotels and flights for Nigeria. And so we hop on a plane, go to Nigeria. I'm super nervous because I just don't know what to expect and how he's going to react. But we go, we meet up with my family, and he does so well. And it was funny because everyone wanted to take photos with him, and he was meeting my extended family, like my grandmother. I never thought I would bring a man home to meet my grandmother. I felt like I fell deeper in love with him, watching him just immerse himself in my culture and be there for my family while we put my grandmother to rest. And it was just a really amazing, beautiful trip. Honestly, there was nothing crazy that happened. And he tells me while we're in Nigeria that the law firm has settled the issue with his taxes, and they're filing a document for the accounting firm to pay out a settlement, and it'll be paid out soon. And then he'll be able to transfer me the money that I'm owed. And so I'm like, oh, I'm breathing deeply. And it's awkward because I want to bring it up to him all the time, but he's also paying for everything. So I feel like I don't want to put too much pressure on him, even though I should have. So we come back to Denmark, and at this point, we are trying to figure out what our plan is, when we're going to come back to the States. And he says, you know what, like, let's just go back to my parents' house in my hometown. They were actually on a vacation, so the house was empty, and we can figure out what we want to do next. And I said, okay, that sounds good. So we go to his parents' house, and at this point, I'm still working remote. So I remember I was at the dining table working, and he walks up to me, and he says, I have some really, really good news. I was like, what's up? He said, my realtor just reached out to me and said there's a very wealthy family that is interested in purchasing this apartment complex. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best news in the world. And he said, there is one caveat. He tells me that his realtor has found a buyer for this apartment complex, and there's one caveat. So apparently it's a very wealthy family. He did not know who this wealthy family was. But this family, the way they draft up the contracts, whenever they have to buy a property for tax purposes, and there's like a certain cutoff for when they need to acquire a property, they have like their own contract drafted up that basically requires the buyer and the seller to put money into escrow, so that if the seller changes their mind of selling the house, they get liquidated damages. Basically, make sure the deal goes through. I have never experienced anything like this in my real estate career. Obviously, Denmark is a different country. I didn't really know how real estate worked there. So not only is it different rules and guidelines, but it's also, I've never worked with like a super ultra wealthy family before to understand that this might be a requirement or something added in their contracts. And so I remember being like, how much is it going to be? And he's like, oh, it's going to be like $120,000. I remember just like being like, well, we don't have this money. Like, there's no way we can make this work. And so he said, I'm going to be able to come up with a loan, get a loan from a bank. I've already called them. I can get a loan from them for like $100,000. So we're just going to be short another amount. And at this point, my accounts are dwindling. And because I was in this long distance relationship, I was not focused on doing real estate at all. Like, I had taken a full step back from real estate. But I did have a career where I was making well over 6 figures. So I still was like making a pretty steady income. But my savings had been dwindling down. So I didn't have a whole lot of money left. So I remember at this point, he's like, we should make this deal work. And I'm seeing this as a way to get out of our financial position. And let me just say, my ex, if he wasn't such a narcissistic psychopath, he'd be such a great actor, because the way he sold this stuff to me, like, it was insane. So I remember he said that he was going to take his watches to a store to see if he could get it sold within 24 hours. Obviously, that might be kind of difficult. And so at this point, he's like, how much money do you have? And I was like, I really don't have a whole lot of money to give you. So I remember I gave him like a small amount, maybe like $3,000, because I wanted to make sure I had enough money for like bills and miscellaneous. And I just wanted to have a little bit of cushion. And I was getting stressed out, but he ended up coming up with the money. He says the deal goes through and that it's going to close in 6 weeks. And so he tells me what I think I'm going to do is switch my address from Denmark to the States, especially since I have been living in the States more, and I'll be able to save money on taxes. And at this point, I was like, is this tax evasion? He goes, this is absolutely not tax evasion, because I am spending more time in Dallas than I am in Denmark. And I said, okay, well, if you've done research and you feel certain about this, then I believe you. So the deal goes through. It says it's going to close in 6 weeks. And so he said, we should take a trip to celebrate. And I'm like, we don't have any money. And he was like, well, we can just use your credit cards because, you know, like we'll be able to pay it off whenever the money hits. And this is probably one of the most like idiotic decisions I made. Y'all don't have to tell me this is stupid. I'm fully aware. But we ended up going to Portugal for a week, and we used my credit cards the majority of this trip. He had a little bit of money because keep in mind, he is working as chief commercial officer for this tech company. And that was 100% real. And he was making about $400,000 a year. Again, 100% real. I, at certain times, have verified the money hitting his account from his company. So he's making money, even though we're having a lot of financial stress. He's still bringing in a steady income. I'm still bringing in a steady income. So he was able to pay a little bit of the trip, and I was able to pay a little bit of the trip. So we go to Portugal. We have the most spectacular week. I remember that was the week that I decided I want to get married in this country. I love it here. It's so beautiful. I was working still at this time, and with the time difference, I was basically working from like 5 to midnight. And there was one day while we were in Portugal that I was just complaining about working. I'm like, I'm so over this job and I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I was just complaining about it. And he just said, why don't you quit? And I remember looking at him like, what do you mean quit? And he said, well, we have this money coming in and I want you to be happy. I want you to do something that brings you joy, and real estate brings you joy. And I really hadn't been doing a whole lot of real estate that year. And so I told him, I said, well, it's going to be like kind of a transition. I'm not going to be making a lot of money at first. He said, well, we're going to have a cushion. And luckily I make money. I'm going to be able to afford all the bills, and you can just focus on building your business back up. And so I was like, are you sure? He said, yes. And let me tell you, everything about this decision, it felt right, but it also felt wrong. And let me tell you, I do not regret quitting my job. I regret the timing because we were not in a great financial position, and I was making like $150,000 a year at this job. So it was a very steady, stable income, and I trusted him to be my provider, and that was stupid. And I have never relied on a man for anything in my entire life, and I will never do it again, like never in a million years. But you know, you live and you learn, and I made the decision to put in my 2 weeks notice. And yes, I know that was idiotic. Y'all don't have to tell me. And so we go to Portugal, come back to Denmark, and we're in Denmark for maybe a day, and then we travel back to Dallas. And at this point, your girl is hurting financially, because now I'm accruing like a little bit of credit card debt. My savings is like nothing. And at this point, I'm fully trusting him, and I believe him when he says, we are going to overcome this circumstance very, very, very soon. And keep in mind, at this point, I have not caught this man in a single lie. And obviously, I gave out my trust way too easily. But in my mind, I was thinking, why should I question him when he's never given me a reason to? Which is crazy because I feel like he was giving me all the reasons with all these red flags. But we go back to Dallas, and I remember his sister and her boyfriend came to visit us for a week. And we had a good time with them, but I felt like he was super annoyed with them the entire time. He was complaining. He was just like, I just feel like they're being super cheap. They don't want to do anything. And it just felt like, again, I thought him and his sister would be a lot closer. It was weird. So we have a great trip with them visiting us. And then we go to Miami and meet up with his best friend and his girlfriend. And this was the best friend he was with whenever I met him in Croatia. So we're in Miami, and for the most part, we're using my funds for this trip because he's obviously put most of his money into this escrow account, and he paid for a little bit of stuff, but he didn't have a whole lot. And I'm expecting this money to hit like any day now. So a couple of days after Miami, we went to Denmark to celebrate his mom's 70th birthday. We had promised her we would go, so we actually booked a round trip flight from Copenhagen when we came back home in June. So now it's August of 2023, and we're in Denmark. And I remember we're at his parents' house, and he comes to me. He's like, hey, I just got off the phone with the IRS, and they said they flagged the transaction from the apartment complex. And at first, I'm like pissed. I'm like, I asked you if this was going to be a problem. He's like, it's not going to be a problem. they're probably just going to take out like some taxes, not the full amount. They just need to review it, and then we'll figure it out. But I'm not concerned. You should be concerned either, even though I was super concerned. He said they set a hearing date for September 10th. At this point, it's the middle of August. So I'm like, okay, so now I have to be struggling for another month. And so I'm frustrated, but he's also like trying to calm me down, but also like gaslighting me for feeling the way I'm feeling. And so I'm just, all my emotions, I'm just stuffing them in all the way. So we celebrate his mom's 70th birthday, and this is when I meet like his entire extended family, like dad and mom's siblings, all their friends, and I meet the older sister, and she's there. At this point, she's pregnant with her second child. She's there with her first child. I meet her, and she is just such a nice, kind, wonderful human, and I just can't picture her being this evil, crazy woman that beats his mom. And so I remember just feeling a little at odds about that, but I'm still fully trusting my ex 100%. So a couple days after his mom's birthday, we're all hanging out at his parents' house and we're grilling. And I remember we all start to notice kind of around the same time that his dad does not look like he's doing well. And we're starting to get a little bit concerned. And that's when my ex's mom makes the decision, like, we need to take him to the hospital. And so we pack his bags, we load him up, we go to the hospital, and I'm freaking out because I don't know if things can take a drastic turn or not. And so we're waiting at the hospital, waiting to see what the doctors will say. And we are in Denmark at this point, and we just took his dad to the hospital, and I'm freaking out, very worried, don't know what's going on. After the doctors do some testing, they basically determine that he's still dealing with blood poisoning and he has like really high infection numbers, but they're not super concerned. And so we all take a deep breath and we're happy that it's not as serious as we thought it was gonna be. And so after a couple days, he's released from the hospital, and it's now time for me to head back to the States. And so obviously I'm feeling all these emotions as I'm leaving. I'm sad because I'm leaving him because, again, we are still very much in love with each other, want to be with each other 24/7. So the goodbyes are still really, really tough. And at this point, I didn't know when he was going to be coming back to Dallas because he had a couple different work meetings going on. And so I fly back to Dallas, and obviously feeling all the financial stress. Like, this is probably one of the roughest moments of our relationship, especially because we weren't together physically. So the day of his meeting with the IRS, I remember I was a big ball of nerves. Like, I couldn't even sleep that night. You have to keep in mind that I go to bed and I wake up knowing that I'm waking up to news. I don't know if it's good or bad. So I wake up and I call him. I go, how did it go? He goes, worse than I possibly could have imagined. I almost like expected it to have gone bad. I'm like, if it had gone good, I would have been more surprised. I'm like, what now? He said, well, they scheduled a second hearing for my business account January 10th. And currently my personal account is also under investigation. So they have put a hold on my assets for the next couple months while they continue to investigate. And there's another hearing scheduled for my personal account in October. So basically they froze his assets and told him that he only had like a specific amount of allowance that he was able to use from his money every single month. And I have never heard anything like this. I've never known anyone that have had their assets frozen, and I didn't know how this worked. And obviously at this point, I'm definitely feeling like all the red flags. I'm like, this does not make any sense. But there's not a whole lot I can do. And at this point, I'm just like, the only thing I can do is trust him. There's no one in my life that I was talking to about any of this, because I felt a lot of need to protect him and he wanted me to protect his image. And I remember telling him, like, I really want to talk to my family about this. Like, this is really stressing me out. And he's like, no, don't. Like, they're going to view me differently. So he very much talked me out of being able to disclose this stuff with my close people. So the last thing I want to do is just ramble about shit that does not matter. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. Not a whole lot happened between September of 2023 and November of 2023. The only thing big that happened was that I wanted him to be in Dallas. He wanted to be in Dallas. So I booked him a flight to come to Dallas. I am at this point fully financially supporting us. Like, I think he's getting like maybe like $4,000 a month that the IRS is like allowing him to use. And keep in mind, the Danish IRS is not called IRS. It's called SCAT, some other stuff. I can't even pronounce it. So that's why I'm saying the Danish IRS. So just a little side note. But October comes around. He's now in Dallas. He's been in Dallas for about a month. And we're struggling financially, but still so deliriously happy and in love, which is insane. But I I cared about the money, but I loved him more than that. And our relationship was just based on this deep love that we had. And so the money was like almost secondary to the love that we shared. And so basically October comes around, he has the hearing, I'm nervous, and ends up working out in our favor, and his account opens up in October. And I'm so happy. He like immediately sent me, I think like $9,000. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. Like we're gonna be able to like come out of this. And he said his business account, that was where the 10 million was supposed to be. That was supposed to be opened up not opened up. He was supposed to have a hearing set for January 10th. So that was when we were gonna figure out what was gonna happen. And I remember asking him, like, what do you think is gonna happen? He's like, well, I've been like looking at research and there's a chance that they might put in like an 18-month to 24-month hold. I go, 18-month hold? And he said, yeah, but I don't think that's what it's gonna be, but you know, we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. Again, have never caught him in a lie at this point. And so basically his personal accounts opened up. So we're alleviated of a little bit of the financial stress, but it's still like a little bit stressful because obviously I had quit my job and I was doing real estate full time. And let me tell you, y'all, I was working my ass off, but it almost was like I was restarting my career because I hadn't been working in real estate much for that whole entire year. So I was 100% relying on him for maybe like the month of November, I would say. But the rest of the months I was still finding a way to make ends meet. I was still making a little bit of money from like doing like campaigns on Instagram, other things. So I still was like making a little bit. So December rolls around and his 90 days of being in the States is about to be up. So he went back to Denmark the beginning of December. And so my plan was to go and meet him in 2 weeks. So we're gonna spend 2 weeks apart. And so he's in Denmark for about a week and he sends me a message and he says, my dad's back in the hospital. And I was like, no. And so at this point, the plan was for me to go to Denmark and spend Christmas with his family. And this is gonna be my first European Christmas. And I was so excited for the Christmas markets and all the things. But obviously that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is making sure he's okay, making sure his dad gets better. And so I'm going through all these emotions. Number one, I'm missing him. Number two, he's dealing with all of this and we have each other's location. So I can see that he's physically at the hospital in his hometown. So I can confirm that. And so obviously the plan was for me to come in 2 weeks. And he asked me, he's like, what are your thoughts if I move up your flight for you to come in a week? And I said, obviously I need to tie up some things for work, but I would love to be there for you. And he said, okay, like then let's do that. And so I moved up my flight. My sister was watching my dog and I leave. And at this point, the plan is for me to be gone for now 3 weeks. I was originally gonna be gone for 2 weeks. Now it's 3 weeks. And we're still feeling a lot of financial stress. But at this point, like I had like 3 deals in the pipeline. So there's money that's gonna be coming in. But obviously we're still stressed out because like money's coming in, but that does not mean the money's there. So we were like up to date on like bills, but still 100% stressing out. And so originally the plan was my ex said that he really wanted to go stay at this hotel called Hotel d'Angleterre in Copenhagen for 1 night before we went to his hometown to like be with his family. Cause his mom had said, I want you guys to just enjoy 1 day in Copenhagen in the Christmas markets before you come home. And so we were like, okay, we'll do that. And so he hadn't booked any of the hotels or anything. And like the day before I'm flying out to Denmark to go see him, he tells me that he just got charged this huge insurance payment for his 2 apartments. Obviously he sold the apartment complex, but his 2 singular apartments that are rented out, he got hit with an insurance payment. And basically it wiped out like everything he had. So again, I'm annoyed. At this point, I'm just like sensing that a lot of this stuff is just bullshit, but I also am just like, it's the holidays, his dad's in the hospital, so I almost feel bad like coming at him whenever he's already dealing with so much. And he had said that his mom had given him money for like hotels, dinners, things in Copenhagen. She was fully aware of like the insurance payment and the financial position he was in, and she wanted to help. And again, she just wanted us to enjoy Copenhagen for 1 day before we came back. So we take the train back to Aalborg, and a good family friend picked us up from the train station. We went home, we had dinner, and then immediately we go to the hospital, see the dad, and like he looks sick, but he looks like he's like in decent spirits. And they said he was gonna be home for Christmas. And so we were really, really happy about that. So over the course of the next couple days, we're going to the hospital like sometimes 3 times a day, just to like take his mom there, check on the dad, make sure everything's going okay. And then the dad comes home, and like obviously he's super weak, and we're like helping him around. But regardless, we had a wonderful Christmas. And even though like we didn't have a lot of money, and I remember like I got him very, very cheap Christmas gifts that year. And same thing for me. I actually told him like, you don't even have to buy me anything. Like the gift is being here with your family. And he got me a few small things, but regardless, it was fine. And the day after Christmas, we had gone to a champagne party at one of his friends' homes. And, you know, I was excited. It wasn't very often that we like went and like hung out with like friends of his. It was very, very rare. And so we went and we were having a good time. And obviously I didn't know a whole lot of people that were there, but his best friend, the one that he was with when I met him in Croatia, he was there. And we were just chatting outside. And before we had left the house, my ex had told me, I really don't want to go out tonight. Like, I just want to go to this party and then come home. And I said, that's totally fine. And so we're at the party, we're outside just hanging out. I'm talking to his best friend. My ex is inside the home. And his best friend tells me, he goes, you guys should come out tonight. Like, please come out. And I was like, honestly, I'm down to go out, but my ex doesn't want to go out. And that was really weird for him because he always is down to like go out and have a good time. So I already thought it was a little strange. And then his best friend looks at me, he goes, oh, he probably doesn't want to run into any of his enemies from his past gambling addiction. I looked at him and I said, what gambling addiction? And his best friend looks at me and goes, you didn't know that he had a gambling addiction? Just to recap, I was spending Christmas with my ex and his family in Denmark. And the day after Christmas, we go to a champagne party. And that's where his best friend told me that he used to have a gambling addiction. So when I hear this, I am just full panic mode. I'm questioning everything and I'm freaking out. I remember it was so cold in Denmark and I was outside, not even wearing a jacket, and I was sweating because I was just like so overheated. And so I asked him, I go, I had no idea. And at this point, his best friend is like mad. Like, he's angry. He's like, are you serious? Like, you didn't know? And I was like, yeah, no, I had no idea. He was like, he told me that he told you. I go, he absolutely did not tell me. And I've loaned him a lot of money over the course of a year and a half. And he said he owed me money. I was like, he was like, he paid me back the money he owed me, but he did take money from me at one point. And yeah, it was bad. It was like 10 years ago. And so immediately I'm like, can you go inside the house and get him? So he gets my ex walks out. He goes, what's wrong, babe? And I said, do you have a fucking gambling addiction? I remember I screamed it in his face. I did not even care that I was causing a scene. I was just so mad. And he looks at me, he goes, I mean, I did, but it was like 10 years ago, which did check with what his best friend said, that it was 10 years ago. I was young, I was dumb, I was stupid. I would never, ever go back to that. And I'm like, well, let's play back all the times that I've given you money. Tell me how to make this make sense. And he's like, I have truly just had a year of so many downs, and I promise you, I would never in a million years gamble away your money. And I don't know what to do to prove it. And I was like, well, this insurance payment that you just told me about, I'm gonna need to see proof of that. At this point, I'm like, I need to see proof. I've been drinking all night, and we get home and I'm just ripping him to shreds. Like, and honestly, he's taking it. He tried a little bit to gaslight me, and I just was like, you're not gonna gaslight me. You're in the wrong, you lied, you have an addiction, and you didn't tell your wife, and you're the problem. And so we spent a while just fighting. I actually ended up going to bed that night, and the next morning, I'm obviously still very angry, very hurt. And he was working in the office in his parents' house. And so after he finishes working, I'm like, we need to go for a walk, because obviously his parents were home and they didn't know what was going on. And his parents are really old at this point. I just like didn't want to bring like any chaos or anything, any drama to the family, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, I should have brought the whole family into what was going on, but I guess my natural instinct was to protect him. And so we go on a walk, and obviously I'm angry, and he like pulls up this document showing me the invoice from the insurance, and it aligns with like the amount that he told me that he had to pay. And so I'm still angry, hurt, all the feelings. And he goes, look at me right now. And I looked at him. He goes, do you really think you know me? Do you really think I'm capable of doing this to you and taking your money and throwing it away? And I looked him in the eye and I was like, I mean, no, because at this point I had never ever seen a side to him that would ever hurt me intentionally or unintentionally. Like, I feel like he always had my best interests at heart and that he was just a guy going through hard times. So maybe it's because I'm brainwashed at this point, but I end up deciding to believe him. And especially because he showed me proof. I also asked to see his bank statements and everything checked out. And so I let it go. And I said, okay, well, do not ever lie to me again. You're my husband, I'm your wife, and you're gonna be honest with me going forward. And if I catch you in a lie again, like, we're gonna have some problems. Already had plans to go to Budapest for New Year's, that following New Year's, and we found some really cheap flights and a cheap hotel. Honestly, we didn't spend a whole lot of money on that trip, and that's part of the reason why we went. But we went there for New Year's, had a good time. As you can probably imagine, I paid for that entire trip. After Budapest, we went back to Copenhagen for one day, and then I went back to Dallas, and he stayed in Copenhagen because he had a bunch of work meetings. I'm home and obviously stressing about this upcoming hearing with the Danish IRS, SCAT, or whatever it's called. And I knew it was on January 10th, and I kind of wanted to wait and see if he would bring it up because a part of me was like, I feel like he's lying about all of this. And so January 9th comes around, and long and behold, he says, oh, my hearing is tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, he's telling the truth about that. Because if he had just like breezed past the date, I would have felt like, okay, he's lying about this whole everything, the business account. And so he tells me the next day he has a hearing. Again, I go to sleep, ball of nerves, wake up the next morning, ask him, how did the hearing go? And he said, they ended up deciding to put an 18-month hold on my account. And I'm like, oh, this is so frustrating. Like, I'm just so frustrated. I feel like nothing is going our way. And he said, listen, it's only 18 months. You're doing well at this point. Like, I was doing well with real estate. And he's like, I have my job and, you know, I don't foresee any crazy things happening. So we'll be fine. Don't worry. We'll be okay. And obviously at that point, I wanted to trust him fully, but I also didn't. So I told him I need to see proof of this. And that's when he shows me email confirmation from his lawyer confirming that there was an 18-month hold on this account. And I saw the email. Fast forward to February 10th. It's our anniversary. And so we decided we're going to go out that night. And I remember we like talked originally about maybe going on a vacation. But then we ended up canceling the vacation just because we wanted to save some money. And so we ended up just being here for our anniversary. And so we went to a nice restaurant here in Dallas, one of our favorite ones. And we go to dinner and he's ordering like really expensive wine. Like, I think he ordered like a $400 or $500 bottle of wine. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, it's our anniversary. And I'm like, I know, but we need to be saving money. And then afterwards, one of my good friends was at a cocktail bar and said, hey, you guys should come and meet us. And we were like, sure. I asked him if he was down. He said, yeah, let's do it. So we go and we go to this cocktail bar. My friend is there. She's celebrating a birthday of another one of her friends, someone that not super close friends with. And they're with like a big group of girls. So I just went to go say hi to her, see her, say hello. And before I know it, my ex is like, I'm going to buy everyone around his shots. And we're at a cocktail lounge, just like kind of expensive. And I'm like, is that really necessary? Like, I feel like, and I looked around and everyone had a drink in their hand. I'm like, we don't need to do that. He's like, oh no, it's her birthday. Let's do it. I'm like, you don't even know who that girl is. Like, why does it matter? And I remember just being super annoyed because I knew he had just spent like $800 at dinner and we're at this cocktail lounge. And I realized like he's running up a bill here and he's just chugging old fashions. And he wasn't the biggest drinker. Like, he drank and sometimes he would get like really drunk, but it was like pretty rare. And most times he could drink and handle his alcohol very well. And so tonight was really weird because I'm like, we're celebrating our anniversary and you would think that he just like wants to be intentional with our time spending it together. And instead it just feels like he's just slamming these drinks. And I was so confused by why he felt the need to get this drunk. And so he's having a conversation with my friend and I'm like seeing him and he's like slurring his words. And then he's talking to my friend and I see like a little bit of spit come from his mouth and like land on like her shoulder and she like wiped it away. And I was like, what the fuck is that? That's disgusting. And so he's drank his like third old fashioned. And then I look up and he's ordering another one. And I look at him, I say, are you sure you should order another drink? And he looks at me, he goes, who do you think you are to tell me when I, like what I can and can't drink? And I said, excuse me, I'm just saying, do you need to have another drink? Like, do we need to get belligerent tonight? And before I know it, he's basically just going off on me, saying that I'm disrespecting him and I shouldn't be telling him that he needs to slow down and that he's a man. And I'm just confused because we've never really like had arguments like this before. And I'm like, what's your problem? And he's like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just go. And I was like, okay, let's go. So we get into the Uber, about to go home. And I'm like, what is your problem? He's like, I just don't like it when you disrespect me in public like that. And I was like, I didn't disrespect you in public. It's not like I yelled, hey, you're drunk, stop drinking. I literally told you right next to you, like there was no one else around. I just said, hey, maybe you should slow down on the drinking. Y'all, I don't know what happened next, but this huge, intense fight spiraled out. We get into the house and we are now screaming at each other. He's telling me that I disrespected him. And now I'm getting mad because I'm like, you're drunk right now. Like, what's going on? Like, you would never behave like this. The fight escalates and he ends up walking out of the home. And I'm like, where are you going? And he said, don't worry about me. I'm going to get a hotel tonight and then we're going to see where we stand. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? So he leaves the house, he goes to a hotel, and I'm so baffled and confused. And like the messages he's sending me are just so insane. And this is a side to him that I've never seen before. And I remember I called my best friend, Sarah, that was living in Germany at the time because of the time difference. She was awake and I'm just bawling my eyes out. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And like, she comforted me a lot, but I just was hurt and upset and angry. Just why is he treating me like this? And so the next day, he says that he's going to come back and get some more of his things and go back to the hotel. And so I'm like, we're still doing this? And he comes over and I'm like, can we have a conversation? He's like, what's there to talk about? Like, I don't know what to talk about. Like, you disrespected me last night. And at this point, I'm like, let's have a conversation about it. And he's like, it's being extremely stubborn about the situation. But over time, he finally is like, okay, it's fine. Like, I'll unpack my bags, I'll stay. And I'm obviously pissed off that he just dropped $1,000 on a hotel room, which he spent like $1,500 the night before for our anniversary, and he just dropped another $1,000 on a hotel room. It's just like spending money so unnecessarily, and it's making me so mad. But I was like, I just want to keep the peace, so I let it go. And even though I'm still very confused at why he's behaving this way. So a couple days go by, and I get a message from one of my really, really good girlfriends, and she says, hey, I've been wanting to reach out to you for some time, but did you know that your ex owes my husband $200,000? And I remember I was like eating lunch. I was next to my ex, I was eating lunch, and I'm just like, I read this message and I couldn't breathe. Like, I literally could not breathe. And I look at him and I go, what the fuck is this? And he was like, oh, well, you know, we were working this crypto deal where we were selling watches at a profit, and he's being super picky about how much profit he wants to get. I'm trying to find the right buyer, but I'll find it and we'll be fine. And I was like, so you kept it, you have this money that you owe this man and you lied to me about it? He's like, well, money's currently in watches and it's gonna be fine. Like, I just need to sell them. And so I was like, okay, even though like it's like red flags after red flags, I'm like, there's something up. So I'm really upset at this point because you don't borrow money from a friend, this amount of money from a friend, and not discuss it with your wife. And so I told him, I'm like, I'm really upset with you that like you didn't talk to me about this, but you know, it's fine. Well, I didn't say it's fine. I just said, this is unacceptable. And I remember that day we really didn't communicate much with each other. We weren't like screaming or fighting with each other. I just like really decided that I wanted to distance myself from him. What he did not know was that I was going to message my friend separately and ask her to ask her husband if the story that was communicated to me by my ex was true. So I asked her, and she responds to me and says, no, this is not correct. And at this point, it's the husband that's communicating. And for the purposes of this playlist and series, I'm going to refer to these individuals as Crypto and Crypto's wife. So Crypto is the one that's responding, and he's saying, no, none of this is true. He told me he had the watches sold a long time ago. He told me he was going to transfer the money, and I've been asking him, and he's been giving me the turnaround time. And, you know, when his dad was in the hospital, I was trying to be respectful, but also like, you know, this is affecting my work because he works very much in crypto. And so I'm reading these messages, and I'm still reading it, and I get to the end, and he said, and just so you know, I had someone look into the wallet that I sent money to, and it's been linked to a gambling website since 2023. And that's when I realized that he was gambling. And in that moment, I just fully collapsed to the ground. I remember I was in the kitchen, and it was like I couldn't even stand anymore. Like I just collapsed to the ground, and I'm just like crying. And he's like, what is it? I'm like, you're lying to me, you're gambling. And he was like, no, I'm not, like still lying. And I'm just like, just tell me the truth. Be honest with me for once in your life, tell me the truth. And he's like, I promise you I'm not gambling. And then I grab his face and I pull it to me, and I scream in his face. I said, tell me the fucking truth. And he looks at me and he goes, okay, I've been gambling. And honestly, I was just quiet. Like it was just 30 seconds of just silence. And this next part is gonna make you all a little confused, but I actually had a showing 30 minutes after that exact moment. So I went upstairs, I changed, and I grabbed my keys, and I left the house, and I went and showed a house. And it was the most bizarre thing ever. Like I was in front of clients smiling, even though like everything around me felt like it was crumbling. So he's obviously texting me like, please, like come home after your showing, like I want to have a conversation. And I'm saying, right now, I just feel like I can't talk to you. So I went to a park, and I called my best friend Natalie, and I told her, I was like, hey, I have some news for you. She's like, what's up? You can talk to me. And I told her, I said, he has a gambling addiction, and I just completely lose it. Sorry, you guys, I get emotional at this part. I just completely lose it. And like, Natalie's my best friend. I love her so much. And just being able to like have someone finally to like be open and honest about what was happening made me feel so good, because I felt like I could just release everything. And she was 100% there for me. She lives in New York, but she was like, whatever happens, I don't give a fuck about him. I give a fuck about you. So where do we go from here? And I was like, I don't know where we go. Like, I'm with this man that I love more than anything in the world. I find out he's been lying to me. I find out that he's stolen money from our friends, and I'm just like completely wrecked. I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. And she's like, something you need to know is that this is the rest of your life. This is it. This isn't something that just goes away. This is addiction. And she had experience with a gambling addiction specifically, and has seen the damage it's caused. And so she said, this is the rest of your life. Whatever you decide, I will support you, but this will be the rest of your life. And so after that, I go inside the house, and he's like, I want to talk. And I'm like, I like still was not ready to talk to him. But I decided to call Crypto's wife, who's my good friend. And I talked to her on the phone, and the first thing I said, I just started bawling my eyes out. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I felt so much guilt, like that I didn't know that all this stuff was happening, and I had no idea. And I just told her, I'm so sorry. And let me just take a moment and tell you, I don't know if Crypto and Crypto's wife are gonna come forward, but they are two of the most beautiful people I've ever known in my entire life. And after what they went through, like they had every right to like go to the police and ruin our lives. And instead they had empathy and they had love for me. And they were just like, whatever we can do to support you, like money comes and goes. Obviously we'll figure that out later, but what can we do to support you? And I just was like, I don't know how to be with someone that lies to me and that I don't trust. Like, I don't know what to do, but you know, at the same time, like I got married, we
said our vows, and we said in sickness and in health, and this is a sickness. And I have no experience with addiction at all. None, zero. Like, I don't even know where to begin. And so I just start doing research and like looking at like podcasts and reading books. And at this point, I'm still very much distancing myself from him. And then I look up a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and I find one here in Dallas, and it was an open meeting happening. And I told him, I said, you know, it's still really hard for me to like talk with you, but let's go to this GA meeting. And so we go to the GA meeting, everyone's like going around circle, telling their stories. I'm just bawling my eyes out during this whole entire thing because I'm hearing like the saddest stories, and I'm hearing like the most beautiful success stories. And so in a way, it like made me understand the depth of what I was going through, but it also gave me hope. And so I, for some reason, still felt like there was like a lot that I didn't know about him. Like there was stuff missing in my gut and my soul. And I kept asking him, is there anything else you need to tell me? Is there anything else you need to tell me? He said no. At this point, I am still in constant communication with Crypto and Crypto's wife. And Crypto tells me, I was wondering, how would you feel about me hiring a PI to look into his past? And I said, 100%, please do it.
So before I dive back into the series, there's a few things I wanted to say. The first being that I am giving you guys majority of bad, and there was a lot of good times in our relationship. I would say I was happy 90% of the time, despite the financial struggles that we're going through. And he was what I thought was a very selfless and caring individual. And the other people in my life would also attest to that. There were a lot of times that he did not have money in his account, but when he did, he was very, very generous with it. He was the type of person that would buy whatever people need, would treat them, and I viewed him as selfless. He also was the type of person that would drop anything at any time to help someone in need. So because of those reasons, I truly believed he was a good quality human. I now know that a lot of those things were self-serving, but I wanted to make a note of that so that you guys didn't think it was just like all bad and all like money exchange every single day. It was not like that at all. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the comments. Obviously, I've gotten some negative ones and some positive ones. I want to speak on the positive ones first. Thank you so much. I did not expect to be receiving this much empathy and compassion, and I just want to say thank you. It means the world to me, so thank you so much. And I wanted to speak on the negative ones as well. Obviously, you know, I made some choices that I deeply, deeply regret. I wouldn't be doing this series if that was not the case. And there's not a single comment that's worse than anything that I have told myself already. Listen, I was a Black woman on The Bachelor. I have a thick skin for that reason. So these messages and these comments that are negative, it doesn't faze me at all. Honestly, I couldn't care less. I am prioritizing protecting others over my own self-preservation, and I will never regret that. But what does bother me is there's other victims that are reading these comments and they are feeling like they need to keep silent because they're worried about how other people will perceive them. And when you silence other victims, you are now giving the power back to the predators, and that is what I'm not okay with. So I challenge the people that are making the negative comments to reflect on what you're saying and to make sure we're all keeping the big picture in mind. We are trying to make sure victims can stand up and find their voice, and we can prevent this from happening to other people. That's all. Okay, I know enough talking. Let's get back to the series. So Crypto tells me he's going to hire a PI to look into my ex. I was 100% on board with this. I did not tell my ex this was being done. So those few days where I was waiting for the results, I remember just being so nervous. I'm like, I don't even know what's gonna come up. Like, I feel like, do I even know this man? And so after a couple days, Crypto sends me a text and he says, okay, here are the preliminary findings. The first thing was that there was no criminal history found whatsoever. So that made me feel a little bit good because I was like, okay, maybe this situation with Crypto is kind of like an isolated incident and it's not like as bad as I think it is. Like he didn't like con like a ton of people in Denmark. And then the big thing that he found was that my ex did not go to the Olympics, not once and not twice. And when I found this out, I was sick to my stomach. And the first thing that I felt was embarrassment because like, why did I not look this up? And I think the reason why I didn't look it up is because the way he downplayed it, like, oh, I didn't play, I was like backup of the backup. It just was like an afterthought to me. It's also why I didn't like bring it up to other people. There's a lot of people that didn't even know that he mentioned that he went to the Olympics, because I didn't really talk about it, because it was like I said, it was an afterthought. And so I was just deeply upset by this information. Just to know that someone could lie about something like this, I was like, this is truly sick. When I received this message, I was at an open house, and luckily it was a vacant house and there was no one in this home. So I had my time to do some research, and I started looking through our WhatsApp messages and videos, trying to just reflect on all the things that he told me. And I see the photos that he sent me of his apartment in Copenhagen, the one that he had sold a year prior. And so I downloaded the photos, and then I reverse Google image searched them, and it pulled up an interior designer's home in Germany. And that just fully sent me completely, because obviously this is a house that he just purchased and sold and made that $500,000 in profit, and half of it went towards the tax bill and half of it went to his friend's plumbing business. And so I'm just like, this is so sick and disgusting. I can't believe someone would have the audacity to lie about this. So I go back home. He actually was at the gym, so I'm just home spiraling, waiting for him to get back. And he walks in, and the second he walks in, I immediately say, I need you to sit down, we need to have a talk. And he automatically looks kind of annoyed. He's like, what now? Because obviously we'd been really going through it the past week with like finding out about his addiction. He's been going to GA meetings. I've been wanting to talk about his addiction all day, every day, because I want to get as much information as possible. And so he's just like, I'm drained, I'm tired. I'm like, sit down, we need to talk. So he sits down, and I say, did you go to the Olympics? And he goes, yes, I did. I go, no, I'm gonna ask you one more time. Did you go to the Olympics? He goes, I went to the Olympics. So I say, okay, well, I'm going to give your mom a call, and I'm gonna verify it with her. So I pull up my phone and I dial her number. It actually rings once. And he goes, okay, I didn't go to the Olympics. And I just remember just sitting there and just being like, who lies about something like that? And I told him, on top of that, you also lied about the apartment that you were living in. I was like, this is sick. And at this point, I'm spiraling because I don't know what's real or what's fake. And so I tell him, listen, I saw the email from your lawyer about the business account, so I feel like I got the proof I needed for that, but I do need proof about the other 2 apartments in Copenhagen. He said, absolutely. And that's when he pulls up the lease agreements, and obviously the lease agreements are like all in Danish, but he's like translating it for me. There's like the name, there's the address, there's the amount they're paying, it's their lease term, all these things. And so I was like, okay, I felt like this was proof. And so at this point, I like don't know where we go from here. And like, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, like 100%, I was thinking about just picking up the phone, calling my family, and just being like, this is happening, I need to leave him. But I'm still so in love with this man. I can't picture a life without him. Despite everything that he's put me through, I just felt like I could not say goodbye to him. And I really just felt like this disease is the enemy, not him. So we need to work as a team and fight it together and overcome this. And I felt like we were capable of anything at this point, you know? And especially like with the challenges that we had already gone through, I felt like we were invincible, like we could overcome anything. That's the mentality that I was going into it with. And so obviously I'm talking to him about my reservations. I was like, I don't know where we go from here. Like, and I did tell him that I didn't know like how to move forward. And that's when he just like starts crying, and he's just like, I love you so much. Like, whatever I can do to prove to you that I will be the man that you deserve, I will do it. And he was like, I am sick to my stomach about what I did to crypto and his wife. I saw him, and he was, you know, living such a great life. And in my mind, I thought like I could take some of his money and like make more money, and then I could give him this interest, and then we would have some money. And I was like, listen, this is all delusion. And at this point, I've done a lot of research on gambling addiction, and it's like it's all a delusion centered around this dream world where you're going to provide these cars and nice and luxuries to the people that you love when you get your big win, and it never happens. And so I just said, listen, you need to know, and I know you already know this, I don't need these things. I don't need the big house, the fancy cars. I don't need any of this. I don't. Like, I'm happy just being here in Dallas with you and just hanging out with Smokey on the couch watching movies. I don't need any of this. And I did feel so ill and disgusted, but I'm still so in love with him. Despite the lies, despite everything, the love was still 100% there. And so I communicated to him. I said, listen, things have got to change or you're going to lose me. Plain and simple. And he said, I will do anything I can to keep you. And like, this is my first time seeing him cry. And as you guys can assume, I'm a very empathetic person. So at that time, I just went over to him and hugged him. And we both just like cried together for like an hour. And it felt like the breakthrough I had been waiting for our entire relationship, because I'd never seen this emotional side to him. And I felt like, okay, like we've had this breakthrough, now we can move forward. And so we had already had a trip booked to Colombia because he only could be in the States for 90 days. So we're like, where can we go that's affordable and you can reset the 90 days without having to fly all the way back to Denmark? And so we went to Cartagena, Colombia, and it was a very affordable trip. And I know a lot of you are thinking like, how are you traveling? He was making a very steady income, and once I found out about the gambling, like his account was like stacking back up. I had told him like, we're gonna reach out to crypto, we're gonna set up a payment plan, and I had told crypto about the trip to Colombia that we had already booked, so that I didn't seem like we were being disrespectful towards him. I had a feeling that he had the ring for some time and that he was going to propose, and he knew that he could not propose to me with everything that was going on, and he needed to take time. And by the time we were going to Colombia, I felt like we were getting our lives back on track. We were obviously stacking up our money again, and I felt like he was being open and honest with me. He would talk to me about his addiction. He was going to GA meetings every single week, but I still did not feel comfortable accepting a proposal unless he made amends with crypto and crypto's wife. And so I told him the day before we went to Colombia, I said, we need to go and have a sit down conversation with crypto and crypto's wife. And obviously I realize now that my ex should have been the one to suggest that we go make amends with crypto and crypto's wife. But regardless, we go there the day before we go to Colombia, we go to their house and we sit down in front of crypto and crypto's wife, and I will pick back up in part 16.
So I'm going to take a break from here. And it's just so important how we could all tell from our story. The guy always has something bad. Like there's always a bad news. Oh, I've got to tell you something. Oh, something bad happened to me. Oh, my family, my dad is having an operation. Oh, my dad has got cancer, leukemia. I've got back surgery to do. And the next week you're going to Paris. Like, sir, are you not getting time to recover from your back surgery? How can you still like be a tourist in Paris, which would involve a lot of walking? Mind you, you've just had a back operation, which will affect your mobility. Like, are we not thinking anymore? Are we letting love blind our senses now? But I totally get it. It can happen. But at least she should have at least looked at the scars from the wound of the operation on his back. I'm sure she should have, massaged his back, felt with the fingers. The scars, there are no scars, there's no dressings, no plasters. What is going on? And then you meet the dad. You didn't ask anything about his cancer. He was in hospital a few weeks or months ago. You didn't ask anything about that. Another red flag. Another thing, like there is so many loopholes that she didn't question. She was just going through it, just sailing through on this trip, on this cruise, on this sail, and it's going smoothly for her. There's a lot of bumps. There is a lot of rocky motions in the sea, but she's not bothered. She's just sailing through. That's what I just think this is. Like, there's so many loopholes. Like, if you guys can note any loopholes, put in the comment section. Let's banter. Let's talk about this. And I'm just going to stop here for now, and I'll get back to it later. But thanks for watching. This is Honesty Podcast. If you have not subscribed, please do. If you see a box that needs, type your comments. And also, if you see a thumbs up button, give me a thumbs up and like the video. Thank you so much. See you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.